All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dakota here with old Luxvoni.com, coming at you live today with lesson number 2 in the 8-figure webinar masterclass. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to nail, design, build, and script the ultimate webinar introduction that converts like crazy, grabs attention, sets some very powerful frames, and gets attendees to actually watch your full webinar. Now, in this masterclass, we're going to be teaching you some money-making magic. Instead of pulling a cat out of the hat, we're going to show you how to pull $1 million out of the hat by nailing this piece of your webinar section. This is the entire beginning of your webinar, so consider this the foundation of your webinar. If you screw up on your intro, people won't make it to your content sections, and if people never make it to your content sections and you lose them, they'll never make it to your close, and then they'll never hit the call to action. So this is a very, very important element. Now, the agenda for today's web class, as we discussed on the last video, we talked about that 8-figure framework. We talked about the introduction. We talked about the content sections. We talked about the transition, and we discussed the close. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going into that introduction and breaking it apart piece by piece and teaching you how to build the ultimate webinar intro based off of this framework. So the agenda for today, real simple. First thing we're going to cover is we're going to cover authority. Second thing we're going to cover is we're going to cover micro and macro commitments. Third thing, we're going to go through how you can pre-frame objections. Fourth piece of this, we're going to talk about hope. Fifth piece of this, we're going to talk about how to set an intrigue frame in your webinar that keeps people chasing you through the webinar to ultimately get the end of the webinar, where is your actual offer. And then I'm going to be taking you guys through a introduction of an 8-figure webinar and literally presenting this to you live so you can see exactly how I took all of this and blended it into a 15-minute intro that grabs attention, converts attention, and keeps people intrigued like freaking crazy so they don't fall off on the first 15 minutes of your webinar. So as we discussed in the last video, we talked about that framework when it comes to the introduction. We talked a little bit about the authority side. We talked about the commitment. We talked about the objections. We talked about the hope and the intrigue. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go through each one of these subcomponents and explain to you how to actually achieve these things. Now, if you look and you really start studying authority, and you look at Charlie Munger's 25 Continental Biases of Human Misjudgment, one of the most impactful biases that one can leverage to influence and persuade an individual or the masses is, of course, the authority bias, right? Authority bias is the tendency to blindly follow or believe instructions and views of a person who is actually in authority. As human beings, we evolved over millions of years, and as we've evolved, we've always been a herd led by an actual leader. The leader of the herd is typically a trusted advisor to make decisions, big decisions, on behalf of all the people that are behind him, right? So when it comes to being a human, we have a deep-rooted sense of following authority deeply. It's not really an opinion, it's a real fact. In the old days, everyone followed the king or the queen. In the present day, everybody follows the politician or the CEO, the doctor, the attorney, the athlete, whoever possesses the most authority in their particular niche, in their particular domain, is the one that has all of the power. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. When it comes to this authority bias, let's say you break your arm and you're a child, for example. You break your arm and your mother picks you up. They rush you to the emergency room. And when you get to that emergency room, you walk in, there's 15 floors, there's all these doctors, there's all these people, all this payroll. And a doctor comes in, they tell you what's going to happen. They're going to fix your arm. It's going to be a real quick and smooth process. And that's how it's all going to go down. The second option, let's say your mom picked you up and put you in the car and drove you to a friend of hers who worked out of a freaking garage. You show up, he's got a snap-on toolbox, he's got some hammers, he's got some nail guns, and he looks at you and he says, hey man, we're going to fix that arm up. It's going to take a couple of days, but I got my hammer, I got my tools, we're going to fix you right up. Who do you feel more comfortable with? Do you feel comfortable with the individual who is working out of a garage with no credentials or no authority, who can't afford an office, who can't afford payroll to fix the arm that you're going to spend the rest of your life with? Or do you trust the doctor who is on every publication, who is one of the top ER doctors in their field, who drives a nice car, has a beautiful home, and is really doing well with his practice? Who do you trust? Now, if you're not clinically insane, you're probably going to trust the doctor with the most amount of authority. And that's why when we walk into doctor offices, if there's a big building, if there's tons of staff, if we walk in, doctor walks in, he's got his coat, he's got his credentials, he graduated from medical school, we trust that doctor, right? Now, let's talk about an attorney for an example. If you have an attorney, he's super conservative. He doesn't have a big office. He's an analytical personality type. And then you compare that to an attorney who is very bold, very cocky, always wins. He's got exotic cars. He's got celebrity clients. He's got a massive, beautiful office that you walk in. Who do you want to represent you? Do you want the guy who's super conservative and wants to do everything by the book? Or do you want the guy who understands law, who understands how to bend things and get things done and ultimately win for their clients? Personally, I want the guy with all the credentials. I want someone bold. I want someone with the exotic cars. I want someone with celebrity clients. Now, entrepreneur, for example, think about this. If you're looking to grow your business and you go to one firm and this firm tells you, yeah, we make $1 million a year. We've got, 4 or 5 people on payroll. We're really boutique. This is a small little agency, but we're really good. And you're going to these marketing people to show you how to make $1 million a month, for example. Well, the first person barely makes $1 million a year. So you're probably not going to feel comfortable taking advice on how to grow your business to $1 million a month from somebody who's only doing $1 million a year, right? Second example that we have here is you go to a marketing firm. They've got crazy social proof. They've got tons of testimonials. They have great quality of work. They're very transparent. You schedule a call with these guys and you start vetting them a little bit, and they tell you a little bit about their firm, and they say, yeah, we do $30 million a year. Do you trust the person who does $1 million a year to make you $1 million a month? Or do you trust the person who's making more than $1 million a year to get you to $1 million a month, who's making $30 million a year, right? Well, you're probably going to trust the individual who surpassed what you're looking to accomplish, right? So that's the power of authority bias. And we don't really see it all the time, but it's happening to us 24/7, 365. So when it comes to building your webinar is based off a perception. What you're doing over a webinar is you are creating new beliefs for the attendees, which then build a new perception for the attendees, which then ultimately creates a new reality for the attendees. And then through that reality, you now own their perception, you own their beliefs, you own everything. So it's kind of a mind warping event that we go through. Definitely if you study really good closers and really good webinars, you'll kind of start progressing through these and you're realizing subconsciously, wow, before I watched this, I had this belief. Now I have a new belief. That new belief has created a new perception for me around this topic, which has now created a new reality for me around this topic. It's kind of mind-blowing, right? So when it comes to building authority on a webinar, there's a lot of ways you can do this. The first thing is giving the webinar. That's authoritative. Standing on a stage is authoritative. So just getting the webinar done, being on the webinar, that is something that an authoritative figure does, right? So that's step one. Step number 2 is you want to leverage a power and prize frame in your presentation. You want to be the prize. You want people to chase you. People want what they can't have. They only value the things that they pay for, and they chase the things that move away from them. So make sure when it comes to frame control, you're setting an intrigue frame, you're setting a power frame, and you're setting a prize frame. I'm going to teach you how to do that at the end of today's masterclass. Next thing you can do to build authority is social proof. Client testimonials, case studies, celebrity association, basically framing yourself with those people does crazy amounts of things for your authority. Like, for example, let's say you walk into a doctor's office, or let's say you walk into an attorney's office and you're looking to hire a business attorney for an issue that arose in your particular practice. And you get in there, you walk in the door, beautiful office, you get in there and you look up on the wall, and some of your favorite sports players are on the wall with this attorney. They have pictures together. Right off the bat, they're guilty by association. You automatically associate them with a high status, high authoritative figure because they have that. Now, this could be at an event, could have been at a basketball game, it could have just been a quick selfie that they happened to see somebody walking down the street and they caught. But you don't think about that. The only thing that you see is authority. My God, this attorney is associated with Kobe Bryant. Holy crap. He's going to be able to help me. If he's working with Kobe, I know for a fact he can help me, right? Crazy, mind-blowing. But we do this all the time. So you want to be able to build some association in there with some celebrity. If you don't have a lot of authority on your own, there's ways to frame it up and tee it up, and I'll teach you how to do that at the end of the web class. Case studies and results, another great thing to build authority. Testimonials, people endorsing you on the topic that you're teaching. Client results, of course, power and prize frame and intrigue frame, and just getting on the webinar. That's an authoritative thing as it is. Now, step number 2 of this framework is commitment. When we talk about commitment, why do we want commitment through the webinar? Well, the first thing is because buy-ins lead to people buying. The more buy-ins you get from your audience subconsciously, the quicker they're going to move and take advantage of your offer once you get to the close of your webinar. Now, if you've ever witnessed some of the greatest speakers of all time pitch, we're talking Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Marshall Silver. If you've ever watched them give a presentation, it's kind of crazy when you see 300 people in a room, Tony or Zig or Les standing on the stage. They make this presentation, they're engaging with the audience through this presentation, and then by the end of the presentation, you watch everybody jump out of their chairs and run to the back of the room to sign up for whatever offer they're pitching. Well, what you probably didn't do, if you've ever seen this, is record that entire pitch and transcribe it and break it apart. Because if you did, you'll notice they're using a very similar framework that we're using here to really get people to engage and convert into high-ticket sales. Cool thing about speaking from a stage is you give the presentation one time to 400 people, and it's a 1-hour presentation, but you make 10 times the result because there's so many people in a room. A webinar is the same thing, except it's even cheaper. There is no overhead. You can put 300 people on a webinar. You can trade an hour and a half one time. You can evergreen that webinar. You can run it 24/7, and it's constantly converting and generating leads and sales for your business. So one of the tricks, if you ever study those presentations, what you'll notice is they're not boring presentations. They're very engaging presentations. And what a lot of people don't realize is through that presentation, they're using a couple of tricks to get commitments from the actual audience to where when they get to the close, everybody goes running. And one of the primary tactics that they're using to do this is they're using micro and macro commitments in their presentations, which are very, very insightful and important. And one of the best ways to make your presentation stand out and also be very engaging is to leverage a variety of macro and micro commitments through your entire presentation. So when it comes to micro commitments, these are small commitments that you're going to get the audience to make. A micro commitment can be something as small as, does this make sense? Right. Do you agree? Are you getting value from this? What do you think about this? Could you see yourself using this, right? Those are micro commitments, very small. So when you're giving your presentation, don't be scared to say, right? Does that make sense? These are micro commitments. The more micro commitments you get, the more commitment you're going to get when it comes to your macro commitment. Now, your macro commitment, they're more bold. They're like call outs, if you will. So what we end up doing with a macro commitment is we flat out call out the audience and we get them to raise their hand to answer a question. Now, on a webinar, we're not going to have them raising their hand from their computer, of course, but we are going to get them to commit to using whatever we're teaching them. And before we go any further, we need them to commit to this. So an example of this: before we move any further in today's presentation, I need you to commit to, most importantly, yourself and also to me, that if I show you how to use this secret to grow your business, you will promise me, God, and everybody else in the world that you will use this strategy. What I don't want you guys to do today is procrastinate and say, maybe I'll use this next week, maybe next month, maybe next quarter, maybe next year. And before I go any further in today's presentation, I need you to make that commitment to me. Please put "you are committed" in the chat box to using this before we go any further in today's presentation. That is the example of a macro commitment. So again, micro commitments, right? Does that make sense? Are you with me? Are you getting value from this? Those are little subtle things, micros. And then macro, we literally call the audience out. And I'll show you how to use these later on. I personally use micro commitments through my entire presentation. Like you'll probably see, if you go through my webinar, you'll probably see 50 to 150 micro commitments spread across the entire webinar, which is why it's so interactive, which is why it converts so well. So I know it's kind of hard to do this if you haven't done it before, but as you're scripting this, think about this. I know it feels uncomfortable, but trust me, it feels uncomfortable because it works. It's a weird thing to do. It's almost like mirroring in a way. So you want to make sure you're using these micro commitments. And then if you look at my presentation, what you'll also see is I use big macro commitments 4 to 5 times in my presentation as well. I have never seen an 8-figure webinar that neglects micro and macro commitments. Every single one of them has it. Every single presentation that's been done on a stage that has sold millions of dollars off the stage, they all consist of macro and micro commitments. So do not neglect this, because the more people that you get to buy in, the more people end up buying. So very important aspect there. Third piece that we have today is pre-framing those objections. What prevents the audience from watching your webinar to the end and, of course, taking advantage of your offer in the close of your particular webinar? Now, one of the things that I do is when it comes to marketing, whether I'm building a webinar, whether I'm building a sales page, whether I'm building a video sales letter, the first thing that I do is I put myself in the shoes of my ideal customer by writing down all the objections that one might have to my webinar or my offer. I always start with the objection that someone might have for my webinar. We're going to talk about pre-framing objections for your actual offer in the close. This is not the time for that. This is to literally pre-frame why this webinar is going to be different than anything else that they've ever seen. So remember, the introduction, the goal of the introduction is to keep them watching, keep them intrigued, so we can push them to the content section. The content section is to give value so we can push them to the transition, and the transition allows us to transition into the close. So remember, every step of this feeds the other step. So you just have to focus on nailing each step, and it'll come out and it'll flow perfectly. Now, when it comes to those objections, writing those down, let's talk about objections that one might have to watching a webinar. First objection: is this webinar worth my time? Is this webinar going to be a pitch fest? Why should I finish this webinar? Is the guy giving this webinar credible? Can I trust the guy giving this webinar? Can I execute these strategies on my own in this webinar? Will this webinar be different from all the others? And do I have the time to complete this webinar in its full entirety? Those are some examples of objections that you want to pre-frame before the prospect or the audience ever thinks of it. So what I do is I write all these webinars down, and then in my introduction, I pre-frame every single one of these objections before the audience even thinks it. Right before the audience thinks it, I'm there pre-framing it before it ever comes to their mind, so I don't have to worry about losing that audience on the introduction. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the example today at the end of this masterclass how you can pre-frame those objections and make it a super smooth transition to where it feels natural and it grabs people's attention. Step number 4 of the introduction is use hope. The future has to be much better than the present. And as humans, it's kind of an interesting thing because if you think about life itself, it's almost like a video game because it's compromised of different levels. And every level is another devil, but at the end of the day, we all have current situations and we all have desired situations. So think about this. 5 years ago, you had a current situation. You chased a desired situation. You probably achieved your desired situation within those 5 years. And now your old desired situation has become your new current situation. And then what we do as humans is we keep moving that needle over and over and over, and we chase it, and we chase it, and we chase it, and we continue to level up, if you will. So the cool thing here is the guy that's making $50K a month right now, he's going to want to make $100K a month. The guy that's making $1 million a month, he's going to want to make $5 million a month. The guy making $20 million a month wants to make $50 million a month. And the cool thing is, once all these guys achieve their desired situation of making whatever they want to make, they're then going to move the needle again and they're going to want to make more. So that's what's interesting as humans. We have to understand that. So what we want to do through our webinar is we want to leverage hope to make your audience realize that their current situation is not their final situation, and that through this webinar, through consuming this content, through paying attention and taking notes through this web class, their current situation is not the last place that they're going to go. We're going to get them to their desired situation through this particular web class. So they have to feel that their future will be better than their current circumstances, and that you're the vehicle that is going to bridge that gap through your training. One of the things that you can do to build that hope bias, to get them to see that, to agitate their current situation and bridge them to their desired situation, is relate with them. Explain to the audience that you've been where they're at, and these secrets changed your life dramatically. Relate with the audience and explain these secrets they haven't just changed your life, they've changed millions of other people's lives just like theirs that have hired you as a coach, bought your products, bought your services, or whatever it may be. So you want to be relatable here. There needs to be some of that rapport built. You've got to be able to create that hope. You've got to show them that it's not over. There's another level. We're still playing the game. And if they want to get to the next level in that game, they need to pay attention to your webinar so they can level up, and then they can keep moving, keep progressing, and keep being happy, because happiness comes from progression, right? The 5th step of your webinar intro is you have to leverage an intrigue frame. Intrigue leads to engagement. So any type of curiosity that you can build through your webinar, this will lead to engagement, and engaged people end up buying your products and services. So when it comes to building intrigue, it's a very powerful tool. And I want you to think about this, because think about when you leave work. You come home from work, you're driving, you pull into your driveway, you approach your front door, and the first thing that you see is 3 or 4 big packages from Amazon. If you're anything like me, you probably order a lot of stuff and you probably forget about what you actually ordered. But as soon as you see that box, it's literally that box takes over your entire life. It's like, I got to get in the door. I got to get a knife. I got to open this box up. I want to see what's inside. There's some intrigue there, right? So in your webinar, what you want to do here is you want to show the audience the box. You want to hint towards what's maybe inside of the box, but you want to keep the intrigue through your entire presentation. And finally, by the end of your presentation, you need the audience to be saying, give me the knife, give me the box, let me open the box, let me see what's inside of the box. So that's how you want to do this. You don't want to get too nitty gritty. You don't want to reveal too much in your introduction, okay? You want to show them the box, hint what's inside of the box, and then keep them moving and keep hitting towards what's inside of that box until you get to the close, where you're then going to give them the knife to where they can open the box and get all the incredible things inside. So the best way to do that is you need to show up on your introduction as an expert. You need to be able to show the box, hint towards what's inside the box, and use a hook to explain to them at the end of the webinar. You're going to unveil that box. You're going to open that box up, and they're going to get all the juicy stuff that's inside of it. But you don't want to give too much away. So it's very important to create hope. And you can do this through bonuses or intrigue. You can do this through bonuses. You can do this through all types of different frames, if you will. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So let's go ahead and progress through this. What we've done to this point is we've talked about the authority side. We've talked about micro and macro commitments. We've talked about how you can pre-frame objections in your webinar. We've talked about the power of hope, understanding current and desired situations. We talked about intrigue. The point of the webinar is to show them the box, hence what's inside of the box, but only reveal to them everything that's inside of it and let them open the box in the close of your actual webinar, right? Now what I want to do is I want to take this framework that we just talked about, authority, commitment, objections, hope, and intrigue, and I want to show you how to do that in real time through your actual web class. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to pitch this webinar like I was pitching it live. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dakota here with Luxvoni.com. In today's web class, I'm going to be showing you how you can increase your business's revenue by 2x, 3x, and possibly even 4x with complete predictability down to the dollar and the day by leveraging 3 revenue-driven marketing secrets. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking right now. You're probably sitting on this web class today saying, who in the world is this guy claiming that he can increase my business's revenue by 2x, 3x, and possibly even 4x when he doesn't know anything about my business? And I know some of you are sitting there right now thinking that this web class is probably going to be some BS. So let me cut straight to the chase and let me show you some real damn proof. As you can see, my firm did over $1.2 million in cash collected in one single month and did over $1.5 million in revenue. Here's some more proof. Here's our Stripe account where you can clearly see we did over $1 million in sales in less than 30 days. And on some of those days, we even had over $70,000 days in cash collected. Now, if you're wondering how in the hell we generate that type of volume in sales for a private application-based only marketing solutions firm, here's our Facebook ads account where you can clearly see we have spent over $1 million on paid advertising via Facebook. And trust me when I tell you, we didn't spend that $1 million on ads because we thought it would be fun. We spent that $1 million because we consistently turn paid traffic into qualified leads for our sales team, which ends up turning into, guess what? Pure profit. Now, this is a legit company with real offices and real people inside them. And if you're wondering exactly how many people you need to make over $1 million a month in sales, here's our HR software, which you can clearly see we only have 15 employees. And half of those employees, 4 or 5 of those employees, are actually 1099 sales reps for our firm. So as you can see, this is a real mean, lean organization making over $1 million a month in gross. And we started this company back in 2015 with no venture capital backing, no loans, no investors, no angel investors, nothing like that. What I'm going to share with you on today's web class, it hasn't just worked for us. It's also worked for Tony Robbins. It's worked for Dollar Beard Club, Grant Cardone, Ty Lopez, Brendan Burchard, dentists all over the country, lawyers all over the country, real estate professionals all over the country, and it's worked for some of the biggest 8-figure product and service-based businesses that have ever existed. So throughout today's web class, everything that I'm going to teach you here today, this is not some type of BS theory. Everything I teach you today is going to be grounded in some real damn proof. And if you're anything like me and you're sick of people giving you advice that they're unqualified to even give and tell you how to run your business, I know where you're at. I've been in the same shoes. I can't stand it either. So trust me, don't think I'm going to have the audacity to come on to today's web class and tell you how to run your business. What I'm here to do is to create a new perception for you when it comes to marketing your business, a perspective that's generated over $100 million for our private clients, a perspective that's made me well over 8 figures. So all I'm asking you is to keep an open mind for the next 45 minutes, because I'm going to prove that this one perspective is the ultimate way to grow your business, scale your revenue through the roof, and get to your desired situation. Now, at this point in today's webinar, you're probably sitting there right now thinking, okay, what are we going to be doing in this webinar? And how do you know if this webinar is actually worth your time? So that is a great question. And let me be frank with you. This video is only for executives and well-established business owners. This means if you are not in the business, if you don't have a business, if you're not making real revenue, if you don't have actual revenue, or you don't have a business yet, this is not for you. Just scroll back up to your browser, click the bookmark page, save this on your desktop, and come back to this web class when you're actually generating some real revenue. Now, if you're an executive or a business owner on this web class right now, and you're ready to scale your revenue, double, 3x, 4x, maybe even 5x your revenue in a predictable and an accountable and a measurable way, then you are in the right place. And I want you to stick around to the end of this web class, because at the end of this, not only am I going to be delivering tons of value for completely free, but at the end of this web class, I'm going to throw in over $11,000 worth of invaluable bonuses and resources that will enable you to scale your business for completely free with no strings attached, just for finishing what you started. Now, before I go into delivering this value, I want you to understand, I'm not just here to show you a few methods that I found on Google and pitch you on some BS make money online course. That is not the goal whatsoever. I'm here to actually teach you 3 real marketing methods that I owe all of my success to, and all of my clients will claim that they owe their success to. So all I ask of you today is, if I spend the time teaching you these methods that have generated 8 figures for me and hundreds of millions of dollars for my clients, my question to you is, will you tell me, God, and everybody else in the world that you will use these methods once that I've proven that these methods are the key to 4xing your revenue? What I don't want you to do is procrastinate and say, hey, maybe I'll use this next week, maybe next month, maybe next quarter, maybe next year. And before we go any further in today's training, I want you to actually make a commitment to me, and to, most importantly, to yourself, to take action on these methods only if you see value in them. Go ahead and put a yes in the chat box if you can make that commitment to me, and to, most importantly, to yourself. Great. Now let's talk about today's agenda. That is the example of a webinar intro that, quite frankly, converted like crazy. If we go through this, a lot of things happened on this. I built authority out the wazoo. I built status. I leveraged an intrigue frame. I pre-framed objections through the entire presentation. And I walked through this in a way that grabbed their attention and kept them around to get them to the next step in the webinar. Now, this introduction is probably 11 minutes long. You can shorten it a little bit. You can be more punchy. But as you can see through this, one of the things that I really focused on was objections. So look at this. In today's web class, I'm going to show you X, and then literally, I know what some of them are thinking. Their biggest objection is going to be, how in the hell is this guy going to show me how to 2X my business when he doesn't know shit about it? So I pre-framed that. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. You're probably like, who in the world is this guy claiming that he can 2X, 3X, and possibly even 4X my business when he knows nothing about my business? And I know some of you guys are sitting there right now thinking that this web class is probably going to be full of BS. So let me cut straight to the chase, and let me show you some real damn proof. Boom, put it right in their face. Boom, put it back in their face again. Boom, put it in their face again. And then we go back into it and create some intrigue. Now, if you're wondering how in the hell we generated this type of volume and sales for a private application-based only marketing solutions firm, here's our Facebook ads account, where you can clearly see we've spent over $1 million on paid traffic. And trust me when I tell you, we didn't spend that $1 million because we thought it would be fun. We spent that $1 million because it generates real profit and real ROAS for our firm. More intrigued by us. Now, this is a legit company with real offices inside of them. If you're wondering exactly how many people you need to make over $1 million a month, As you can see, here's our HR software. Half of those, 4 or 5 of those people are actually sales reps for our firm. And this is a real lean, mean organization making over $1 million a month. Now check this out. I'm relating with the audience here. I didn't have any VC backing. They probably don't either. They probably don't have an angel investor. They're probably bootstrapped just like I was. So I use this and say, listen, I started this company with no funding whatsoever. And what I'm about to share with you on today's web class, guys, this hasn't just worked for me, it's worked for. I showed them Tony Robbins. Now look at this frame that I just set. I'm not saying that these people are my clients. Yes, some of them are. But I leveraged authority and association with these people, and by having these screenshots, by having these components, soon as I reveal this, they automatically look at me as associated with Tony Robbins, with Grant Cardone, with Ty Lopez, with Brennan Burchard, with dentists, with lawyers, with real estate professionals, and it goes on and on and on. So if you don't have a lot of social proof, remember, it's all in the framing. This hasn't just worked for us, it's also worked for. Guilty by association. Now they assume that I've worked on all of these projects. And I leave it there for their perception. Whether it's true, whether it's not, doesn't matter. I just created a new perception for them, which in return creates a new reality for them as they progress through my webinar, which will get them to the content sections in my webinar. And then after that, I ground it again. So throughout today's web class, everything I teach you, it's going to be grounded in some real damn proof. And if you're anything like me, you're probably sick and tired of unqualified people giving you unqualified advice on how to run your business. Pre-framing an objection again. So trust me when I tell you, I'm not going to have the audacity to tell you how to run your business. But what I am here to do is to create a new perspective for you when it comes to marketing your business. A perspective that's generated over $100 million from my clients and over 8 figures from me. So all I'm asking of you today is to keep an open mind for the next 45 minutes, and I'm going to prove this perspective for you. Huge intrigue bias there, right? At this point, you might be asking yourself, what are we going to be doing in today's web class? I'm calling them out. And then I'm disqualifying the people that I don't want to watch the web class, which also builds up the power for the people who are there that meet my criteria for this web class to where they actually stick through it. And then I disqualify and qualify them. I tell them that if they have a revenue, great. And then I set a hook, a massive hook. I show them the package. I'm keeping it big picture. I'm showing them the package. And I'm telling them right here, if you stick around to the end of this web class, not only will you have all the tools and the resources to 2x, 3x, and 4x your business's revenue, but on top of that, I'm going to throw in over $11,000 worth of bonuses for free with no strings attached, just for finishing what you started. That is valuable, right? That is going to hook them. That is going to hook them to the end to where they can claim these bonuses. Now, again, I'm not revealing what these bonuses are. I'm just keeping it very big picture here. And then what do we do here? As we're going through this, I've made some micro commitments. Makes sense. Yes, I've related with them. We're thriving on the same frequency. And then at the very end of this introduction, before I move to my agenda and my content sections, I get them to commit. I'm not here to sell you some BS product or make money online. I'm here to actually teach you about 3 marketing methods that I know all of my personal success to, and my clients will claim that they owe all of their success to. So all I'm asking you today is, if I sit here, if I reveal this process to you, if I spend the time teaching you about these methods, my question to you is, will you tell me, God, and everybody else in the world that once I've proved these methods are the key to 4xing your revenue, will you actually use them? That is a macro commitment. I'm getting them to make a commitment to me. As I progress through this, I've made multiple micro commitments, and then before I move to my content section in the webinar, I get them to make that commitment. Put a yes in the chat box if you can make that commitment today. And then I roll into my agenda, which is my 3 content sections, and then I move to the next piece. So that is the example of how you build a stellar introduction for your webinar. There's a lot of different frameworks you can do here. You may be uncertain in what's best, what's not best. If you need help with this, you're welcome to head over to luxvoni.com and schedule a consult with us. We do some consulting around webinar scripting. I used to have an entire consulting practice where I built these webinars from scratch for my clients. We no longer do that because we have so much going on. But if you want us to just help you with the scripting and the framework and kind of create that framework for you, look over your offer, make sure that you have the confidence, you have some certainty, and I kind of review it, you're welcome to. We charge $4,000 for the intro. We charge $6,000 for the entire content section, and then we charge another $4,000 for the close. So if that interests you and you're intrigued about getting this set up, building something that you know for a fact is going to convert without a question or a doubt, feel free to head over to luxvoni.com. We're happy to do that. But if you're trying to build this on your own, you want to take a whack at it, go ahead, watch this over, go through this, take notes. It's very important. And you can use mine as an example of how I framed all that up and made sure that I followed that perfect framework. I leveraged authority. I leveraged commitment. I pre-framed objections like a pro. I created hope. I explained to them they have a current situation, but the desired situation is much more promising and it's much more closer than they think. I set some intrigue biases. I set a massive hook, and I set some bonuses up to get them to progress through the next sections of the webinar. So that concludes today's video. What we're going to be doing on the next piece is we're going to walk through some slides just like we did today, and we're going to progress through that entire thing, and we're going to talk about the content section. How do you structure your content in a way that shows the package without revealing all the great stuff in the package, by keeping it very narrative, very big picture. You can teach some nitty-gritty stuff. I'm not saying you don't want to deliver value in your content sections, because the more value that you deliver, the higher your status is going to go and the better that they're going to convert at the close of your webinar. So that's very important. But long story short, today we covered authority, we covered commitment, we covered how to pre-frame objections, we covered hope, we talked about how to set an intrigue frame, and then I ran you through a live example of an 8-figure webinar intro that you can mirror, you can take, you can see how I framed it up, and you can use it as inspiration to design the ultimate introduction for your webinar. Now that concludes lesson number 2 of the 8-figure webinar masterclass. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, give us a thumbs up below the video. Hit that bell button so as we release the other videos in this masterclass, you're actually notified, and don't forget it. And if you like this type of content, do us a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're posting all this for completely free with no strings attached, just to help you guys get everything that you desire and quite frankly deserve. So that concludes today's video, and we will see you on lesson number 3. Be great, enjoy the day, and remember, you're just one webinar away.